Well, on this day in history, let's just call it the impossible happened. Nope.
No, it really is impossible. Josh Pate is going to join us here live on HQ.
Yeah.
It is the Josh Pate Power Ratings, the JP poll. As he always points out, these are ratings, not rankings. And you see no movement there in the top 8. That's because he already had Iowa way down at 9 before they got blown out by Purdue.
He knew.
And Ohio State now is back ahead of Iowa in his poll. They beat Kansas State. They jump up to number 9. So let's bring in Josh Pate and talk about things here. Listen, I always want to talk about Iowa and Iowa State. Here it actually works because that's where we see our first movement in your poll this week. And I think this is where polls like yours are really valuable because, you know, you see the AP poll, Iowa State's not ranked, Oklahoma State's 8th. And I'm getting texts from people that are like, why are we favored? Why is Iowa State favored by 7 points in this game? Because the AP poll isn't exactly a rating now, is it?
So, look, Amanda's lead-in will probably be something that I send to my mom later. So tell her, because I know she's still close by. I appreciate it.
Yes,
I sincerely
of course.
appreciate it. It's a lot better than the artwork on this show. And I also want that directed to her. But as for Iowa State, look, there's this great stat out there that I think we as a college football public, we underutilize. And it is post-game win expectancy percentage. So when Iowa played Iowa State, Chris, it was a great day for you. It was a great day for Hawkeye Nation. And it doesn't matter what I'm about to say. It doesn't take away from the win. But Iowa State had a 91% post-game win expectancy, which loosely translates to don't give the other team the ball. And history says you would have won that game 9 times out of 10. They also had a plus 50 post-game win expectancy against Baylor. So both of Iowa State's losses, they count in the loss column. But when it comes to predictability, in other words, odds making and futuristic thinking and all that sort of fancy stuff that I have no business talking about really, that's where Iowa State is viewed a lot higher in the power rating community than maybe in the AP community. And Oklahoma State is on the total opposite side of that coin. Like Oklahoma State's a great story right now. But Oklahoma State, albeit undefeated, is coming in with multiple games under their belt where their post-game win probability was well below 50%. So it's just the kind of thing that Vegas looks at and says, hat tip to you. You got a great record so far. We're going to bank on that not continuing, and we're going to bank on eventually things meeting in the middle. And if it meets in the middle, Iowa State is still thought to be the better team, and I agree with that.
And Iowa State, obviously a touchdown favorite against Oklahoma State this weekend. This game is in Ames. Oklahoma State, that's the one that I've been reading the replies to your tweet of the poll. Got a lot of people say, well, okay, how is Oklahoma State all the way down at 25? Your reply is, at least I have them rated this week. You don't think they're going to be rated come this time next week, do you?
I think it was a classy response on my part. I think it was very heartfelt. I don't think they will. No, but I'll also say this. That in fact, I wouldn't go that far. So think about this now. If you just use logic and we're just looking at these numbers, these power ratings as who would be favored against who on a neutral field, well, it stands to reason if Oklahoma State goes into Ames and they're a 7-point dog and they lose by 3, not only should Oklahoma State not drop, I could actually see me bumping them up a couple of spots. That's all dependent on what else happens. This is not in a vacuum, but it's also not totally just resume and merit based. Like there are a lot of fancy numbers crunching that goes into it, but it's very possible in a loss. We saw that a couple of weeks ago with several teams actually in a loss that ended up bumping up a few spots in a power rating format. That's not unheard of. In the AP, it kind of is. And in the JP, not so much.
You got a team in the teens right now in Notre Dame, number 16. They have USC coming up. You see Notre Dame making a big jump, maybe perhaps into the top 10 once again if they get this win. They are favored.
Yeah, so think back across college football seasons past. There's always that team, or maybe 2 or 3 of them, in November. And you find yourself loosely uttering some form of this phrase. Boy, that team didn't have its act together early, but you don't want to play them now. Well, Notre Dame has 3 quarterbacks that they've played extensively, sometimes in same games so far this year. And you've already, well, I'm not going to say you, Chris, I'm not going to indict you personally, but a lot of people have already written them off. And yet you just showed their schedule. We're showing it right now on the side slider. They've got 1 loss. And so they're going up against USC this weekend. Hat tip for you, by the way, just a little weather alert. Mid-40s at kickoff. Team from Southern Cal, no interest in stopping the run already, especially in cold weather, doubly especially with an interim staff. So love Notre Dame minus the points this week. But if they get that win, Look at the games they still have. They got North Carolina favored, Navy favored, at UVA favored, Georgia Tech favored, Stanford favored. They're going to run off some wins probably against competition that, fair enough, you could deem inferior. But we're looking at a blender of a season where no one's undefeated, no one's perfect. And so down the stretch, I mean, sure, Georgia's going to be there. Like Oklahoma may very well be there. But are we going to have like 7 or 8 teams in a logjam to where some of these teams that were forgotten about, maybe in Notre Dame, maybe even in Iowa State, couldn't kind of backdoor their way into the conversation? I don't think so. Like, I think Notre Dame could be one of those teams that in November you're saying, wow, the Irish, once left for dead, here they are again, right in the thick of this college football playoff rankings reveal show.
And Notre Dame right now, 7-point favorite against USC. Yeah, if they're sitting there at the end of the season 11-1, they're certainly going to be a playoff contender at that point. How about the most surprising team so far this year for you, Josh? Who would that be?
That's got to be Michigan State. I'm so excited about Michigan State. I was talking on our show last night, and I made it kind of analogous to the Six Flags Flash Pass. I will not go to Six Flags unless I spend the extra 100, which I normally don't have laying around, to cut everyone in line. Because that means you get to ride unlimited rides, and you leave at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you wave goodbye to all the folks still standing in line. Well, college football, you would be led to believe, is supposed to work that way. Like Mel Tucker takes the Michigan State job. He's supposed to get in line, and they're not supposed to win for several years, and they got an inferior roster, not a whole bunch of 5 stars. And instead, he said, well, I'm going to go attack the transfer portal. And they did. And they did it with purpose. They did it with a plan. And here they are. They're undefeated. Look at the teams listed below them in any kind of ranking, power rating or otherwise out there. And look at how many consequential games they've now set themselves up to play down the stretch. This should have been a year 3 or year 4 if it ever happened at all for Mel Tucker. Instead, it's year 2. And there's an attitude up there that basically says, we never decided to settle into the role you think we should play. They are treating the Michigan State program, the Michigan State job, like Alabama, like Ohio State. Anything's possible. And as long as you believe that, it doesn't really matter what history is telling you, even if history suggests otherwise.
Idle this week before their last 5 regular season games against ranked teams. So Michigan State, the most surprising team, according to Josh Pate, in a good way. The most disappointing team. I mean, it seems fairly obvious Clemson is up there, right? But it's easy to forget there was another ACC team in the AP top 10 to begin the season that is having an even tougher time than Clemson. Who would that be?
Yeah, so if you want to feel pain through spoken word, think about this. If you and I were talking to each other in August and we're doing season preview, pretty much everyone out there had Clemson written in pencil, or at least pencil, if not pen, to win the ACC. But anyone who backed UNC, North Carolina, they said, North Carolina, I love Sam Howell, 21 returning starters from that Orange Bowl team. They got a consistent coaching staff. We feel really good about the energy. They've marketed the program well. They're rolling on the recruiting trail, just signed their best class ever. We love them to get to Charlotte, to get to the ACC title game. Now, of course, they're not going to beat Clemson. That was the talk. Then imagine if I were to have told you I can give you one glimpse into the future. I can't tell you the whole future, but I can affirm for you that Clemson is not only going to have 2 losses before Halloween, they're going to be an underdog to Pitt. So they're going to be out of your way. Everyone would have had North Carolina in the playoff, and yet they're 3-3. Like, they're losing games they have no business losing. They lost by double digits to Florida State, Chris. And so Mack Brown, I love him now, love him to death, but Mack Brown's tried to pull this whole, well, it's not our fault. You guys had us overrated. It's your fault. I mean, you should have expected nothing from us. Not exactly the soundest of strategies, but that's the way he's chosen to play this. North Carolina, to me, is every bit as disappointing as Clemson, because at least Clemson's been there. I'll give them a down year. North Carolina hasn't been there yet, and this was a golden opportunity. And look, if we weren't talking about North Carolina, we could direct the spotlight on Miami. The ACC is finally wide open, and instead of walking through the door, everyone just decided to lay down out in the front yard.
ACC preseason poll took all those teams, put them in a jar, shake them up, dump them out. That's kind of what that conference is right now. A bunch of teams that don't normally compete for that championship have an opportunity this season. North Carolina and Clemson may not be a part of it when all is said and done. All right, moving to the high school ranks here, Josh. New number 1 player in our 24/7 class of 22, and it's cornerback / wide receiver Travis Hunter. Now, he has a hard commit to Florida State. Says he's not decommitting, yet he keeps visiting Georgia, and there are a lot of rumors out there that maybe he's rethinking things because of what's going on at Florida State. What's going on here?
Okay. So the most age-old adage in recruiting is don't follow the words, follow the visits. So if we believe in that, then we absolutely believe that that capital G there in Travis Hunter, there's probably something to that. Now, I have listened to everything that's come out of his mouth, and I've looked at everything he's put out there on social, and it sure sounds convincing, Chris, but I've heard that before. So here's what we do know. We do know eventually there's an early signing date coming. We'll have a full show right here at the studio, and so we'll get finality on this before too long. But the way this has worked in the past is there's nothing to it until it happens. And then all of a sudden it happens. And what bothers me sometimes is after it happens, you hear these whispers from people that allege to have known it the whole time. Well, this was inevitable. This was a foregone conclusion. Well, no one told me that. So no one's told me that yet. But I have my eye on it. This is a difference maker now. For those of you unfamiliar, he is an absolute game changer. I was just doing a hit with Steve Wilfong a second ago. We talked about Travis Hunter. We've been doing it constantly. There is a reason, just like Arch Manning, we talked about him last week. There's a reason why so much attention is being paid here. Because, Chris, when we get down the stretch and we watch maybe Georgia play in Alabama or Georgia play in Ohio State in the playoff, players make the difference. It's not always a unit at that level. Like Georgia's team beat Kentucky. Star players are what they're going to need. Individual performances are what they're going to need. And you got to keep stockpiling those guys. So, yeah, Travis Hunter would be big. But I'll also tell you, the team he's committed to right now, Florida State, if they keep him on board, even with the subpar performance on the field, that's a huge testament to Mike Norvell, who has not been at Florida State 10 years and did not come from the Power 5 ranks. He has not had a lot of these recruiting battles. So if he can keep him at home, then it's a big win. It's a big win for anyone who gets him. That's the end of the story.
Our producer, Noah, Florida State grad, he thinks he just keeps going up there to Athens on a sightseeing trip. Just doesn't think he's going to be going there. He's convinced. Hard commit, staying with Florida State. Fingers crossed. All right. Josh Pate, thank you so much from the Late Kick podcast. You can watch it live each and every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on the 24/7 Sports YouTube and Facebook pages. The Late Kick with Josh Pate and the Josh Pate Freights. Gaining steam. Part of that 24/7 Sports Network, wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, transfer portal updates. It's your team all the time, folks. Check it out. Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.